Welcome to Everything is Dead, the show where we challenge the myths of B2B and uncover how go-to-market professionals are thriving in channels everyone says are dead. Today, we're diving into all things cold email with Margaret Sikora, CEO at Woodpecker. Welcome to the show today.
Welcome and thanks for this invitation. That's awesome to be here.
I'm really excited, and I think you're in a position where your platform is driving results via cold emails. There's probably nobody better to talk about cold email and how it probably isn't dead. If I said to you, Margaret, cold emailing is dead, what would your reaction be?
I'm in cold emailing for 10 years and I have survived at least 9 deaths of cold emailing in total. So this is pretty mortal part, but with all honesty, like it's not dead. It's far from being dead. It's just the thing that everything in marketing and sales has changed and now it's changing more dynamic than in the past. So is the question like, can you customize the change and adjust to it? Or you will leave behind and then say that it's dead?
I think that's a really good place to start. I think we're all aware of all the changes in tech, advent of AI, which is making, I would say, it easier to send bad cold emails, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. What are some of those changes? How do you think it's impacting the kind of cold email landscape?
Absolutely. So for sure, like when we started a while ago, cold emailing was pretty straightforward and that was quite easy, I would say, to deliver a message to the main inbox. But we need to remember that even though email is like old technology, it's like cold calling. Calling itself is pretty straightforward and it's not very new. But the whole technology helps to get it more targeted and deliver only what's relevant to the audience. Because when we think about, we can say spam filters are more advanced, everything is more difficult, blah, 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 and stuff like this. But let's try to revert that logic. What is happening right now is that every major provider like Google, Microsoft, or whoever else is there, what they want to have is they want to have only relevant content to their users. So if you would be like product manager of Google Inbox, you would like your users to see only something that they care about or that can be at least useful. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's getting more challenging in terms of quality you deliver. And it's not like only anti-spam filters and stuff get difficult, but it get difficult because of a reason, because we all get like ton of content everywhere. And I bet we would prefer to receive something that matters to us.
Yeah, I love it. I love the way that you've presented that because again, I think you go on LinkedIn, which is this echo chamber, and deliverability, I would say, is something I see all over the place, right? Is we can't mass prospect, we can't send a million emails, but actually if you distill that down, the question probably is, should you even be doing that? And I think that is a really good point. If you go back, in my opinion, to what good cold email is and what I teach our ISRs to do, is I'd much rather you send 50 high quality emails to relevant prospects with a good message than actually just load up a sequence that is generic to a generic list. Because actually, what we've seen from a data standpoint is they perform far better. What would a starting point be? Let's just position this as I'm a new startup and I think, hey, cold email is going to be a channel that I want to use to drive demand. What would be like the starting point for a company that's in that position?
Absolutely. So for me, the starting point, aside from a tech part, because this is like a different conversation, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
That's a different story. You need to know what is your ICP, or at least on what kind of segments of the market you want to experiment on. Because it's not, you can do tests and you can check how it performs, but you need to know for whom and why you want to sell or why you want to build this relation. Because without that, you are just like basically blind shooting. So the first thing is always ICP. And when you have this, you more or less should know the context and what kind of problem your product or service solve, because this is your go-to market. So you should know it upfront anyways. And if you have this, you are in extremely lucky place right now, because like a while back then, we were doing cold outbound without like softwares like Clay or Persona or anything that automates enrichment of the context. And now you can just buy it. So you don't have to do it manually. So when you have your ICP, it's just like you need to take a bet on the value you want to deliver there and check a few communication strategies. And the most important part, I would say, don't expect results in a day or two, because you may be wrong with your first assumption. And I hope you will be not, but that's the case. That may happen. So cold emailing has this awesome thing that is very cheap to start and it's pretty fast to start. So you can just take a few bets, see if it works. If it's not, just adjust it and start all over again.
Yeah, I love it. And I agree 100%. It's a scientific method. I think this applies to both early stage companies and even more mature companies in the way that if you're an early stage company, likelihood is you haven't found product market fit yet. You probably have something but you're not entirely sure what that thing is
Yeah.
necessarily. And so actually, even if you simplify it, it's almost market research, right? Like to your point, take a few bets with a few messages to a few different ICPs fundamentally, and then that can then define the rest of the go-to-market strategy that you build out, which I love. Conversely, even from a more mature company standpoint, it's really interesting. I've recorded probably, I'd say 30 of these episodes now fundamentally. And ICP is what everything is
Yeah.
centered around, whether it's cold calling, whether it's ads, whether it's cold email. Unless you really know who your ICP is and the value you could provide that person,
Mhm.
everything fails fundamentally. Everything fails. And so I wonder, let's look at through the lens of Woodpecker. How have you refined the ICP as you've grown and scaled the business?
Absolutely. With ICP, I would say there is one risky thing that you take it for granted once you have it. And this is something what we have learned also hard way. So we knew that like we are for agencies, this is our main focus, but we have also small and medium enterprises that we want to support. And there are like few personas that we focused on. Those personas can evolve because the market change. And this is like constant process. So I would say when you do cold outbound, this is like this beauty that you actually get the feedback. So if something worked a year ago and it's not working now, assuming there's no technical error, it means that something has changed. It's either your offer, the way you communicate it, maybe some competitors, it may be like plurality of options out there, but there is something that has changed. With cold emailing or actually with any cold outbound, because it's not about the channel, it's about the strategy. So you
Yeah.
go and tease after customers, you get this constant clarification of if you're actually doing good job in terms of communicating your product value. And this is cool because you can get it way faster than with ads or with any other acquisition channel
And
that you
cheaper and cheaper. Yeah.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
what you will do with 1K bucks with a paid ads, you can do something, but this is not like reliable channel. What you can do with 1K US bucks and like in terms of cold emailing, you can do almost everything. So
Yeah.
that's substantial change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is I think the advent of technology is helping in some way, but also hindering. So you mentioned Clay, you mentioned Persona. We're heavy kit Clay users here at SendSpark. And it took us a while, candidly, to really understand the tool and use it, but now it's extremely powerful. But I also wonder if there is almost like too much out there, meaning that if I'm an early stage company and I see everybody talking about Clay, I would almost say that Clay isn't a tool from early stage startup standpoint, because actually you're going to get more value doing that market research through basic cold email. And then once you
Mhm.
have it, you refine it. Is that your opinion? Do you actually think that there's a benefit and a negative, I guess, with the advent
Yeah.
of all this new technology?
Yeah, I would say so because it's easy to get lost. At the end of the day, you don't need that much technology to deliver something valuable to your user. This is something what makes it easier, but that's with everything that makes something easier, you can get distracted by this because like I feel because we have so many options on the market now, we tend to search for like silver bullet. So like with deliverability, everyone is trying to say if you add this or add that, that will solve all of your problems. But the thing with deliverability is that it will not, because there is no silver bullet for deliverability because it's so complex that you don't know if this is your copy, your reputation, your IP, your surrounded IP. So the one that is on the server that you're sending from, or maybe you have dedicated that you have burned it. Maybe there's like hundreds of options. So it's good to use all support that is there, but you need to have like your routine, your hygiene of sending. And remember that even if you have amazing personalization, but you have 1 week domain and you have never warmed up anything, that's not going to help because,
Gonna
the
work.
it's
Yeah.
a bit more complex.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. No, I think you're absolutely spot on. I'd like to move into more of the tactical, right? So being CEO of a company that has cold email technology, you probably see a lot of customers that are succeeding, right? Fundamentally in the cold email space. And so I'd like to move to more of the tactical stuff and actually the people that are succeeding with cold email in your experience. Like we've talked about ICP. What other things or what other tactics or strategies are they using to succeed in the space at the moment?
Absolutely. So I would say the type of content you currently send. So like moving away or shifting away from like super long content, focusing on something that is mobile friendly, that you can easily read, going into simplicity. So if the person who receives your message need to think like what to answer or how to address that, there will be no business out of it. So
Yeah.
this really very simple language is something to have in the back of the head. And also deliverability in terms of like tech basics. So not to try to rush things too much. So if you know, you're setting up new domain, warm it up. If you need to have the setup for SPF DKIM, like you need to have it. So those all steps that are the usual steps to take, it's something that brings up value. And the last thing I would say I see as success factor is being more and more gentle in terms of how much you push to sale. Because with current level of just messages that we get on LinkedIn or via email that are super salesy and only focus on selling, we get too much of that. So it changes. Like it's not the moment when you can send link to demo in the first message.
Yeah. And the reason I actually love that, I had an example recently with a vendor who we've actually gone and bought as a result. But the message chain started off, which was like, it was something of value they offered me. It was a DM that said, "Hey, Ben, notice this about SendSpark. I just created this report, which basically goes over this specific pain point.
Mhm.
No hard sell, very much value add, free asset. I could go in, read it." And they just did a really good job of giving me an offer, which
Mhm.
then converted further down the line. And I think rushing it is something that's not talked about a lot. Don't get me wrong, I've been there as well, right? Like you want to start cold email, you buy a domain, you just want to get email in immediately. But I think that's a really good tactical piece of advice, which is don't rush because actually, like for some businesses, their TAM isn't massive. And so by you burning through that immediately, and maybe some emails don't reach, maybe it's poor messaging, I think it does more harm than good. So I actually really love that as a tactical tip, which is don't rush, don't
Yeah.
rush. In terms of adding value, you mentioned that don't be too salesy. Any other like examples or thoughts around how you can offer value via cold email instead of it just being like super salesy from email one?
Absolutely. When you start your ICP building, you probably know how you can input. So what is the value or the problem that you're solving via product or service doesn't matter. So and there's you can angle like if this is like auditing, if this is PDF, video, invitation for community. So anything that is actually relevant to the person you're sending this message to. And I think it's especially important to know that when you personalize ICP, it's not only about content of a message, but the content of a value as well. So for example, if I receive a PDF about, I don't know, revenue increase for e-commerce and I'm a SaaS B2B, I wouldn't care about that because like how it's related. So there is more work to get done also in terms of any know-how or any insight you are providing to the person. And the best
Yeah.
if that practically about them, not about like some generic segment of a market.
Yeah, I love it. And it all comes back to if you've got the ICP right, what they care about, everything flows from that, which is awesome. You've already mentioned like a couple of mistakes, right? You mentioned not really understanding your ICP. You've mentioned rushing and like basically burning through domains and stuff like that. Are there any other like major mistakes or things that you look at when you receive a cold email and you're like, are there any like other common mistakes that you're seeing people make over and over again when it comes to cold email?
I would say there are still few, which sounds very simple, but they are there. So writing super lengthy subject lines. As we tested, the best option for subject line is 2 to 3 words. I personally prefer to use with no capital letters, so everything in a small font, because then it sounds more like human written. And the other one is trying to use like different fonts or bolds or any colors or like fancy signatures. Like your recipient will not care about that. I think it's excessive. And like with cold emailing, there's a lot of about weighting what you put there and what you get out of it. So what you will get from presenting nice picture of yourself, well, it's cool to have in your email, but the recipient will withhold your respect, will not care. And what you're like losing on that side, you're losing that your message is becoming heavier and heavier. So you're just adding some kind of like abstract value, which no one cares about, and you're decreasing your deliverability. And I would say there's one thing which is very technical, but still it's worth testing and seeing and coming back to it. If you're planning to do A/B testing or anything, you're taking a bet. We want to try, I don't know, do a follow up after 5 minutes instead of 2 days. You need to make sure that you're performing the test in a reasonable way. So if you want to test it for a similar audience that you have tested in the past, because if you change too many variables, you will not get any reasonable result. You will get just some random information out there. So there is actually a lot of like logic and math in sales. And I know it sounds boring, but on the other hand, that's the way you check how it works.
And that actually leads me on to another question, which is who should own cold emailing? Who should own the practice? Meaning that I think oftentimes it's in the hands of SDRs. Like I come across larger companies where they have pre-made sequences, right? Already loaded sequences. SDRs just send it out, do your cold calling in conjunction with that. And that's how you generate leads. But there's also this like, I would say, underlying kind of movement of marketing now owning cold email. Like I see a lot of companies reverting to marketing to even manage their SDR team, give them
Mhm.
messaging, all that type of stuff. What are your thoughts there? Who should own cold email in an organization?
Okay, so I would say it's important when you get any new acquisition channel as cold emailing to have some alignment in the company that you're doing it. Because as from our own experience, I don't think you can do efficient cold emailing without at least some decent work on branding. Because like people will check you up and they need to know that you exist and you're somehow reasonably reachable out there. So marketing is always somehow involved in the same sales process for me. But I would say it's more likely SDR or RevGen Ops, how you see this like currently going on, like with this whole revenue operation specialization and people who are just like more into tech of how the sales goes. I would say it doesn't matter how you call the position because that's just a name. It should be someone who is stubborn enough to try with at least some eagerness to test technical stuff. Because as you mentioned, for example, using software as Clay or other tech tools out there is not so easy as it may look like. And the third thing I would say it's to keep thinking that there's human on the other side. So you are not automating chatbots. You need to find an angle that will make human being reply to you. So you need to have this, let's say, skill set of being easygoing and being able to get along with people in an easy way. So the position doesn't matter. You need to be a person of that type of mindset.
Yeah. And again, you keep bringing up amazing points. The one that I would like to circle back on is the piece that you mentioned around like marketing and how they contribute. And so I had somebody else on talking about cold email who mentioned that actually like they connect like social to cold email in the way that like they're leveraging brand awareness, right? Fundamentally posting a lot on LinkedIn because fundamentally when their SDRs now send a LinkedIn DM or a cold email, there's already that connection point. Like, oh, Margaret, I've seen her posting on LinkedIn. Oh, I've already checked out Woodpecker, so I know what you do. What have you tried to do, I guess, from the Woodpecker side? Is that a fundamental part of your strategy as well? Increase brand awareness, and then that gives you a softer landing in people's inboxes.
Absolutely, because I think there's even like scientific research that before you make, let's say, a purchase decision, you need to see brand at least a couple of times. So it's obvious that you need to know about something. What is the likelihood that you will buy something that you have never heard of, like from a person that you don't know and just reached out to you randomly? So branding was always a big part of our story. And I think it's both from technical level so that you can be verified easily and people know that you exist and there's not risk involved. But also right now with LinkedIn and with whole the concept of thought leadership and stuff like this, it's necessary because people feel intimidated. Like when you think about what cold emailing is like, you get out to the group of people you don't know and you just keep saying, hi, you want to talk? Hi, you want to talk? And try to imagine yourself this on the street. Like people you don't know just come to you and say, hey, maybe that's going to work. That's like hell of intimidating. So you should decrease the level of intimidation that you give to people by being present, by talking about the subject they're interested in. And in my opinion, by like setting up the soft relations beforehand. So being visible on LinkedIn, maybe commenting, maybe somehow interacting, because I feel this is more like human to human conversation then. And it potentially will convert in better results. Of course, it always depends on the market. So if your niche is like not related to LinkedIn at all, maybe other sources better and stuff like this. But like on a high
There's
level,
still, I think the principles, same that still apply though, right? If you're selling to salespeople, LinkedIn, phenomenal channel.
yeah,
Salespeople are on LinkedIn, right? If you sell to home services, then you leverage your brand through like trade publications and events, right? It still does the same thing in the way that like
exactly.
you've got your banner at a trade show. They already know, oh, hey, XYZ company. And then the SDR cold emails them. So I think that's spot on. Like we're not saying for everybody listening, everybody should use LinkedIn. But if your ICP lives on LinkedIn, build your brand there and it gives you a softer landing, right?
Exactly. I don't think psychology of buying has changed that much. We just have different channels and we are more distracted, but the way we build trust is more or less exactly the same. So it's just finding people who are somehow knowing you or recognizing the brand so you can trust. And like since the beginning of marketing has been working like this. So there's no change in this. It's just a matter now we need to navigate through more sources than we had in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. A point that you mentioned, which was a previous point, but one I wanted to double tap on, which was like, hey, don't worry about including a picture in your email signature and stuff like that. There is this other school of thought, which is how do you stand out in the inbox, right? Are there additional things that you can do? A lot of people I know send GIFs and actually have great success sending GIFs as like a third step in a sequence. Any thoughts on that component of cold email, right? Like where maybe your competitors are just sending plain text over and over again. Sometimes a pattern interrupt can be nice, which is, oh, cool, like video, for example, SendSpark, right? And then GIFs. So what are your kind of thoughts on that side of things?
Yeah, so absolutely, this is a great example because this is selecting the right things that may work. And as I really don't believe fancy signature can work because it's just a signature, you overlook it. Then I believe that sending a GIF or a video, if that's well targeted and it feels personal, that's something that can work. So then you like sacrifice heaviness of other stuff that are just like no one cares about to have this benefit somewhere else because it's at the end of the day, if you can bet on a sense of humor and it aligns with your brand, and the same with videos. If you can record something that feels personal to the audience and not just detached from the context, then it's awesome because it shows that you care. And
Yeah.
then we come back to the like psychology of why we want to feel relevant and have relevant context there. And of course, everything other than plain text will be a bit heavier. But when you do this decision consciously, so like you clear up everything else and you just bet on this one what really matters, then you're on the safe side.
Yeah, I agree. And just to restate the audience, because it's something I fundamentally believe in, I think what you're saying, and stop me if I'm wrong, is don't send things that aren't going to add value if it's going to ding deliverability. But if you have a really clear ICP and you can break through the noise with GIF or a video, it's almost worth it because you're gonna add value fundamentally, right? In that cold email, which I love. I know we're kind of getting to the end. I guess final topic I just wanted to touch on. We mentioned it at the top of the call AI, right? You can't get away from AI in the world of tech at the moment. And so I think I said, hey, like AI is actually giving people tools to do bad cold email, right? Are there any tools or thoughts you have around AI and how it can actually be beneficial for cold email?
For sure. So AI is great to automate processes that no one wants to take care of. Just a quick example at Woodpecker, we do the full interest level detection with AI because no one wants to sit and read emails and classify them if they're interested or not. So that's something which is great. But I don't think we're at the stage where you can bet on AI without any control in terms of, for example, copyright. Though you have great solutions on the market, you have Twine, you have Lavender, there are plenty of options to support you, but I don't think we are at the level where we just ask ChatGPT, hey, write me a cold email for, I don't know, salespeople from e-commerce in the States, and you will receive something wonderful. Most likely you will receive something so that's the most optimistic. So every time you rely on AI, either use a provider that is dedicated to that, they worked to make it work for you, or just double check everything that you do. Unless you're super techy, you did it yourself and you trust it without any limitations.
Yeah, and I think the way that I thought about, and 100% agree, I don't think we're there yet from the copywriting standpoint. Tools like Perplexity are really good at deep web research. And so I think like a tip that I'll give anyone is if you're looking to write a really personalized, thought out email to a specific account, instead of you having to go through and find, has this person been on podcast? What did their latest like annual report say? That's where I think account research is something that
Mhm.
takes a lot of time, which you can leverage AI for to actually make a little bit easier. And yeah, I love what you just said. Cause like, I think we're in a world now where you mentioned silver bullet earlier. I think humans in general just revert to what's the easiest thing I can do? What's the least work I can do? And actually, I would reposition this to anybody that's listening. Don't think about it as like, how can I do the least work possible? But how can I remove all the tedious, time consuming stuff for me to then spend my time on the things that matter fundamentally?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it. This has been packed with a lot of value add. I'd love to end with just tell us a little bit more about Woodpecker and what you bring to the cold email game and how you're benefiting companies that are leveraging cold email.
absolutely. Thank you for that. Woodpecker is all-in-one software that can help you to get your message delivered, to help you with mailbox purchase, everything that you need, including prospecting and email validation that is free and included. But what is the most important for me is that we've been for almost 10 years on the market, and we have cared for deliverability for like day one until now. This is our key goal. This is our core value. That's why I think we're the best solution that any person who wants to scale up their outbound can use, because we truly trust in the process of making deliverability a masterpiece.
Love that. Yeah. And if you can't get your emails delivered, nothing else matters fundamentally. Margaret, this
That's
has been, this has been, like I said, a wonderful episode. Anybody that's listening, they can check out Woodpecker, woodpecker.co, I think is the URL, right? And Margaret's posting some great stuff on LinkedIn as well. So go follow her on there. Margaret, thanks so much for being a guest, and everybody that's listening, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks a lot. Take care.